Hey everyone, it's Josh Lockheed here, training evangelist at QuoteWerks. Hope you're having a great day, great afternoon, great evening for some of you that may be in different areas of the world. We are here today to cover the topic, getting the most out of QuoteWerks Web. For those of you that have worked with QuoteWerks for a period of time, you'll know that QuoteWerks Web is a tool that we've used and has been evolving over time to provide our users with the ability to use all the functionality of QuoteWerks from a web interface. Before we get started, I just want to point out the fact that I do have Brian Laufer with me, Vice President here at QuoteWerks. He's going to be helping to adjudicate the webinar and help answer any questions that might come up as we go. When it comes to the webinar itself, it'll be a high-level overview of QuoteWerks Web, including how to set up your company defaults, user preferences, product data sources, as well as CRM and PSA and QuickBooks integrations. We'll review the steps that you need to take to pull in contacts and products, build and deliver a document, track activity in QuoteValet, and export documents to QuickBooks, excuse me. So with that being said, just kind of review some of the housekeeping items here. We are working in GoToWebinar, and there is a questions box in the GoToWebinar screen. So if you have any questions, we welcome you to enter them there. As I mentioned, Brian's here to help with some of those questions, and we'll answer them live if we can. And if we can't, we'll follow up at the end. And then if there's any follow-up questions after the webinar itself, you can always reach out to community@quoteworks.com, and we're happy to help you with any questions that you might have. So we'll go ahead and get kicked off. And the first slide that I have here is really around what is QuoteWerks Web. QuoteWerks Web enables users to use their existing QuoteWerks database, products, layout, settings, and licensing to create all the things you can in desktop in web. Now, with that being said, it is an add-on to QuoteWerks Desktop, or some of the things that's relatively new here at QuoteWerks is that it can be used on its own. This is revolutionary in terms of the way that people are using QuoteWerks Web. So it is also, sorry about that, it does require a corporate edition and valid UMP, so want to make sure that we point that out. It is available as a monthly or annual subscription. It does give you the ability to enable SSO or multi-factor authentication. We'll actually go through multi-factor authentication as one of the talking points today. It's constantly evolving. For those of you that have been with QuoteWerks for a long time, have seen QuoteWerks Web from its inception, and certainly believe that you have seen a lot of changes and a lot of improvements as time has gone on, essentially taking what we do in desktop and bringing it into the web. This does extend the functionality of desktop to remote users. So those in the past that may have had remote users are looking at QuoteWerks Web as a better way to do that and handle those types of users. Important to mention here as well that there are new features being added regularly. There's actually a couple new features that we are tracking right now to be released in the upcoming releases. And that being said, our goal, and we're getting quite close, is to have 100% feature parity in QuoteWerks Web to what we do in desktop. So, and I want to, that plus right there is there for a reason, because you'll notice as we go through things that as we are taking a lot of the functionality that we have in desktop and bringing it into web, we're saying, how can we do it better? How can we do things differently? And I think that comes through with that plus that I've included there. So when it comes to QuoteWerks Web, it is a little bit different than if you're used to working with QuoteWerks Desktop, and that you don't have a locally installed running version of QuoteWerks. You're actually going to be hosted to some extent. And there's a couple different hosting options that you have. The first one is going to be self-hosted. And it's important to mention that QuoteWerks Web runs on a Microsoft SQL backend. So in the case where you're self-hosting this, you would want to make sure that you have your servers and licensing set up so that you're able to support the QuoteWerks environment. And there are specific requirements that we have that you need to meet in order to do so. We'll actually talk about that when we go through our best practices. Another option that you have is to host at a third party. So we have Azure and AWS as two of those that we support. And the third option here is for QuoteWerks to host your environment for you. A lot of people do choose that third option because it takes out a lot of the complexities of having to manage the underlying infrastructure, and also removes some of the investment that you have to make from a hardware and licensing perspective. All being said, there are three different options and three different ways that you can host your QuoteWerks Web environment. So how do we start? We start by logging in. There's a couple different ways you can do that. We want to navigate to na.quoteworks.com. There's also links in the QuoteWerks desktop that will bring you here, and other links from different CRM and PSA integrations as well. As I mentioned, you can get there through the desktop and through your CRM or PSA. You'll actually see over here on the right-hand side of the screen a menu from ConnectWise, and you can see that you can in fact open QuoteWerks Web directly from ConnectWise. And then we do have an option as well for SSO using Azure and Entra as well. So again, a lot of different options. I did also want to mention again, as I alluded to before, the MFA or 2FA that we can do with Duo, Microsoft, Google, and more. And we'll actually talk about that in a little bit more detail when we get further on in the presentation. So that's logging in. Its first step is to get into the system. And the next step is how do you navigate through QuoteWerks Web. I'm just going to go through this pretty quickly because we are going to do a lot of this in the demo and review a lot of the information we're going to be talking about, but I thought it's important to mention. So the workspace is where we have all of our active documents. Think of that as your desktop. It's going to be where your active quotes, orders, anything you have open is going to be in your workspace. We then have the documents, which allows you to open existing or create new documents. You can open templates, you can open recent documents. There's really a lot of different things that you can do there. Likewise, we have our products tab. This allows you to query connected contact product databases. And this could include Edelweiss or a product content subscription. We have the contacts tab, which is going to allow you to query connected contact databases. QuoteValet Insight brings you to QuoteValet Insight login screen, and we'll talk about QuoteValet Insight in a little bit later. The QuoteValet dashboard is going to open the QuoteValet dashboard. Vendors allows you to create and manage existing vendor contacts. Reports gives you the ability to export different types of reports. Setup, and this is where we're going to spend a good portion of the beginning of this demo in. It allows you to set up different configuration options, including your product data sources, your CRMs, and all of the different defaults that you might use. And then we have the Update Center. So if you ever want to go in and see updates that have been applied to QuoteWerks Web over time, as they do, they get added there. And then last but not least, we have our Helps link, which brings you to the help documentation, where there's tons of really good information and access to how to do things, how you might troubleshoot, and all of those different topics. So when we're talking about the use of QuoteWerks Web, I thought I might take it kind of from the base level. So when you're setting up QuoteWerks Web, what is a standard workflow that you might want to follow? And it looks a little bit like this, right? And this is how we're going to go through our setup demo as well. First, you want to make sure you have your company and personal information set up. So that's going to include your company information, your logos, your defaults, your company messages, as well as your individual data, your title, your picture, your signature, for example. The next step is going to be to go in and set up your users. So you want to make sure that you have one account set up for each user that's going to be using QuoteWerks Web. You also want to make sure you set your document defaults. So go in and set, for example, maybe terms, deposit requirements, things of that nature. Next step would be to set up your CRM or PSA. There's a number of different CRMs and PSAs that we integrate with, Autotask, ConnectWise, Kaseya BMS, the list goes on and on. But really, the idea here is being able to connect to those systems and being able to do a number of different things like pulling in contacts, creating opportunities, pulling in products. And we'll talk a little bit more about those connections a little bit later, but this is a really important piece to the puzzle if you're using a CRM and PSA. Alternatively, if you're not using a CRM or PSA and you need to just have a contact database, we do have a built-in QuoteWerks native contact database as well. So since we've got all of the defaults set up, we've got our CRM and PSA configured, the next step would be configuring product data sources. This could be a singular data source, this could be a static data source that you upload via text file, or it could be a live data source, for example, a distributor. And we'll talk a little bit about real-time, which is one of the things that we give you the ability to actually see real-time pricing and availability from different distributors. And then finally here we have accounting. So setting up your link into whatever your accounting system may be. We support both QuickBooks Desktop and QuickBooks Online. And when it comes to some other things that I wanted to make sure that we included in the standard workflow for setup, I included here our QuoteValet, so our online delivery and acceptance vehicle for quotes. I already mentioned real-time pricing and availability, but that's something that I kind of put in here as a nice to have rather than a need to have. And then purchasing as well. We connect with QuickBooks Online, QuickBooks Desktop, and not only are you able to send over POs, but you can also export items into QuickBooks. And we also have purchasing modules where you can actually place orders with different distributors as well. So again, this is a standard workflow. You may have a little bit different of a way that you approach things, but I thought I might set the table with just kind of talking about the standard workflow that you might take. And with that being said,
let me go ahead and jump in real quick, if you don't mind,
sure.
if you go back one screen. So when Josh was talking about accounting, he talked about QuickBooks Desktop and QuickBooks Online. The integration for QuoteWerks Web is only for QuickBooks Online. And when it comes to the purchasing, right now we do not have any of the online ordering capability quite yet. But that is coming very soon. So that is something that will be coming, and that's one of those pluses as well, because it's going to be even better than it is in desktop.
Good point there. I might also add that with purchasing, we do currently have the ability to export POs. So granted, it's not the direct online purchasing that we can do in desktop, but still another way for you to get around and to affect that purchasing. So thank you, Brian. I appreciate that. So we're going to get into the setup demo now. I'm going to hop over into QuoteWerks Web. And if you were paying attention earlier in the training, you would remember that it's going to be na.quoteworks.com that we want to go to. Important to mention, if you're going to be bookmarking anything, you want to be bookmarking na.quoteworks.com. You don't want to go in and be in QuoteWerks and then bookmark your active web page, because it's not going to work the way that you intend for it to. So here we are again in the login screen. First thing you want to do is to put in your tenant account number, and this is something that would be supplied to you by your sales team. If you're used to working with QuoteValet, probably familiar with how to get your tenant account number, but if you have any questions about tenant account numbers, feel free to give us a call. We'll make sure you get it. I'm going to put in mine here, and I'm actually using a specific user here just to demo one of the pieces of actually something I've mentioned twice already today, which is that multi-factor authentication. What you'll see here when I log in with the user Josh, we're actually being brought to a different page, just telling me to go back to my phone. I have a Duo push authentication message here. I'm just going to go ahead and approve that, and you'll see that we're logging in. So this is just a representation of one of the different ways that you can affect multi-factor authentication with QuoteWerks Web. And we'll show you how to set that up when we get into our users module. So here we are in our workspace. As I mentioned, kind of the desktop, if you will. We don't have any currently open documents, so it's showing us a nice, beautiful sunset or sunrise here. I don't know which of the two it might be. But as we mentioned, the first thing you want to do when you get into QuoteWerks Web first time is to set up your preferences. So anytime you want to set something up, you want to set defaults, anything like that, you're going to want to navigate over here on the left to the Setup tab. And then My Preferences is one of the options there. Now, as I mentioned earlier, My Preferences is going to be the individual that's currently logged in to QuoteWerks and the different things associated with them. So as you can see, I've got my name, my title, my address, as well as my picture and my signature all loaded here. And those are going to be different pieces of information that are going to be used when the quote is being compiled and going to be included when the quote is delivered to our customer. And it can be used in many different ways. I'm not going to get too much into that, but just to note that all of this information in this page and many other pages can be used with macros and integrated in all the different documents that you might deliver from QuoteWerks. Another important tab here is going to be the email tab, especially if you're utilizing QuoteValet or sending emails from QuoteWerks. This is just making sure that you have a connection between your email and the QuoteWerks system. There's a couple different options that you have when you have setting up the email. But all in all, this is where you would do that, and you can even set some default CCs and BCCs. There's also a MISC tab here with a ton of different defaults. I'm not going to go through them, but you can see just looking here, there's a lot of auto display, enabling add item assistant, for example, is another one. Very granular as to what your specific settings will be. And then over here on the notes page, we have our introduction and closing notes, which are public notes that will be included on quotes potentially if you use certain layouts or include them in your layouts. And then we have purchasing notes and internal notes, which would be internal notes. And then last but not least, we have our contact manager tab, which if you're using a CRM or PSA, this is where you would store your individual credentials. So that again is the first step here, setting up my preferences. The next step would be going and setting up alternate users. So let's say you have other individuals that you want to have access. This is where you would go to do that. We have our users page here. We also have the ability to assign them groups and profiles. And what we have here is the ability to create a new user, clone a user, to edit a user, or to delete a user. So for the purposes of this, let's just go ahead and edit my existing user, saying, hey, watch out, you're a master rights user, don't get yourself locked out. That's an important note here too as well, right, is that being a master user or having master rights is something that gives you really the ability to do anything in QuoteWerks. General best practice would be to limit the number of master rights users that you have, but you do have the ability to assign it to whoever it is that you might be creating an account for. So you'll see here we have my name. Important that when you're creating usernames that you type them in and save them correctly the first time, as they can't be changed once they've been created. We've got the password here as well. And then again, we have the ability to set up multi-factor authentication. We set ours up with Duo, so that's why you saw that Duo screen and the app on my phone. And we have, again, the ability to toggle user rights and to limit the user from changing their password if we would like to do so. We also have the ability to assign them to different groups, to determine which menus they have available to them, so we can get really granular as to what we will allow them to see. Same thing with access here. We have the ability to granularly control different access that this particular user may have. As an example, let's say that we wanted for them to see QuoteValet Insight My Summary. We would go in here and, or see, I should say, totals in QuoteValet Insight My Summary. We can go ahead and click that particular one and it will allow them to do that. So this is really a matter of there being a number of different dimensions, cannot use, can see, really just granular control over what that individual has access to. We also have another access type screen here with documents, which is going to determine which other users can modify, view, delete, and prepare documents. And then here on the sales, we also have some commission and quota information that you can input for the individual users. So all really important and all things that can be done directly within the users page.
And actually, Josh,
also,
real quick.
yeah,
Oh, sorry.
sure.
Go ahead and finish that up. I've got a question from a customer that would be good here.
Yep, I was just going to mention the fact that if you are creating users that may have the same profiles as other users, you do have the ability to assign those rights to other users, but there is another option here where you could actually clone the user, and it's going to take all of the different things that you had set up for that other user, clone it. You can go in, change a name, and you're going to have a user with those exact same rights. So, yeah, go ahead, Brian. What was the question?
Yeah, so a question from Susan. So she already is using QuoteWorks Desktop, and she was wondering if she's going to have to reset everything up again, like the user preferences and the properties that you just showed there.
Short, simple, and great answer is no, you're not. All of the settings that we have in desktop are shared with web, so users, things of that nature, you're not going to have to worry about. Layouts are going to be good. You really don't have to worry about doing anything special. The one thing that you may want to consider, or and this isn't really a setup thing, but we'll talk about it a little bit more detail later, is if you have particular layouts that you have locally on desktop, you might want to sync them up periodically if you create new ones. And that's just a simple process to do. But yeah, all the settings would be the same. Awesome. So actually, when we're talking about settings and setting up those options, we're actually going to be talking about the Options tab next. The Options tab has a lot of different stuff in it. I'm not going to go through everything, but again, we're trying to set the foundation for a install here. And what I'm going to go through are going to be the Company tab first. And this is where you're going to set the information for your company itself. Per Susan's note, right, you're not going to have to redo this stuff, but it is there. And I think one of the things that we've really done a good job at here at QuoteWerks within the recent past is putting a lot of this stuff that are more administrative tasks or default settings in QuoteWerks Web, so you don't have to go back to desktop to do them. So here, in addition to just providing your information, you can also provide your company logo as well as a couple company pictures. So again, this is just, again, setting the foundation for our installation here. The next one I want to talk about is the documents, and this is going to be where you can set up your document defaults. So our document default type would be quote. You can put in the default tax rate, terms, shipping, and this is also where you would put in the due date for a quote or the expiration. So if you wanted every quote to go out with a due date of 7 days, you could set that here. Likewise, if you wanted that quote to expire in 30 days or even 30 days at 5 p.m., you could do that here. This again is going to be applied to every quote that you create though, so you will have the ability to change it. It's just, again, the defaults. So you may or may not want to set these, but if you do, again, it'll be included as your defaults moving forward. There's a number of different things that we can select in regards to shipping, and we can also control our document naming convention, which is all great stuff. Next, we're going to go on over to our document items tab. And actually, before I do, I just want to mention that in this documents section, we have the ability to work with and configure the different custom text, custom memo, custom number, and custom date fields that we have, just like we do in desktop. I'm not going to go too much into that, but custom fields give you a lot of extensibility when it comes to including non-standard fields in the QuoteWerks database. We're going to go over to document items now, and this is just going to be your document defaults for items that you're adding to quotes. You'll see that our default tax code is taxable, but if we wanted, we can set it to non-taxable. And then we can also set our default cost modifiers or price modifiers. Cost modifier is just a way for us to discount off the list price. Excuse me, my apologies. Cost modifier is our way to increase the cost over the base cost. Price modifier is our way to provide a discount off list.
Let me go ahead and clarify that a little bit.
I
Cost
appreciate
modifier
that.
will allow you to do like a discount from list to calculate your cost, is the way that the cost modifier is used.
Yeah, I had a little brain fart there. Appreciate that, Brian. That's why we got you here.
Yep.
And from the screen, you also have the ability to set some defaults in regards to your line items. So we've talked about company, document items. I did want to mention, again, a real-time module here. We did discuss this a little bit earlier, but if you have any distributors out there that you're working with that you want to have real-time integration with, we have a list of them here. On this screen, you're also going to have your sales tax settings, your shipping settings, as well as your product content subscription settings as well. For those of you that might not be familiar, QuoteWerks has a product content subscription that brings in a ton of product information, specs, accessories, similar items, upsell items, product pictures, and marketing descriptions. Really a very extensible and powerful database that we connect with. So this would be where you go to set that up. So that would be, in general, the real-time modules. We could probably spend an entire hour just talking about real-time itself, but before we get ahead of ourselves, I want to talk about QuoteValet. So QuoteValet, again, is our online delivery and acceptance vehicle. You can now configure QuoteValet directly from QuoteWerks Web. This is a relatively new thing. I'm not going to go into a lot of detail here, but I just wanted to point out the fact that we do have the ability to go in and set up our general QuoteValet image for our letterhead, our CNAME, our payment processing, our auto reminder options. All of that stuff can now be done here from within the QuoteValet setup page. I do also want to just mention that we do have a new feature here at QuoteWerks where you can set up DKIM, or domain keys identified mail, which is going to help ensure the delivery of your different emails. Again, I'm not going to get into too much detail on this new feature here today, but if you're interested in learning more, we have a video out there, which is, I believe it's called the DKIM overview. You can go ahead and review that, and we'll talk a little bit about what DKIM is and how you might configure it. And the last,
sorry, we have to figure out a good way so I can maybe raise my hand. So the QuoteValet setup that he was just showing there is actually the exact same QuoteValet setup that you see in desktop now as well. So what we're doing with QuoteWerks Desktop and QuoteWerks Web is anytime we're doing anything new now, where we're actually having a unified setup screen for both of them. So it'll be very similar to what you're used to seeing between the two different environments. And then also we had a question from Bob about user security. User security as far as being able to see these different setup screens, they're exactly the same as they are in desktop. If you're a user that does not have master rights, you will not see these setup screens and you will not be able to configure them.
Yep. Great. Thanks, Brian.
Yep.
And the last thing I wanted to show you here on the setups tab is just the accounting setup. As Brian mentioned, we can currently connect with QuickBooks Online. So this is where you would go if you wanted to set up that link. I already have it set up. If you didn't, you'd have a big button here that says connect to QuickBooks Online, and you would be good to go. So we've covered a large portion of setup. There's two final things that we want to talk about when we're talking about setup, and that is going to be our product data sources. So where are we pulling our product information from? Where are we storing our product costs, price, list costs, descriptions, all that stuff? You can see in this list, I have quite a few product databases that I've connected. A couple of them are external, so we've got Autotask and ConnectWise, but then we've got also internal databases that are being stored natively within QuoteWerks with the comments database, the demo items, our products, and you can also see I've connected to QuickBooks item database as well. Very easy to do. If we wanted to come and create the connection, we'll just hit new, and just for the sake of showing you the simplicity of it, you're just coming in, mapping a couple fields, naming the product database, and then when you get to the end, it'll then be available for you to select products from in your products tab or from the products icon on the standard toolbar. Again, something that we'll show you when we get into our demo of actually how you might create a quote. Much like our product data sources, you can also come in and set up your CRM integrations here as well. You'll see now that I have ConnectWise selected, but if I wanted, I could just as easily toggle or set up another CRM here. I'll tease the fact that we have another CRM that is going to be added to Web very soon. So keep your eyes out on that. We're really excited about adding this new CRM, and you should see that announcement, I would say, within the next few weeks. Brian could keep me honest on that one. So again, this is where you would go to set it up. We're not in in this particular demo to show you how to do the setup, but I wanted to let you know where it was. And when we get into our demo about creating and delivering a document, we'll talk more about how you can actually use the integrations as well. All right, so I'll pause again. I know we've had a couple questions already, but Brian, is there any other questions or any other questions that we think we should review?
No, I've been interrupting you, unfortunately, so no more questions yet.
Not a problem. I'd much rather be answering your question because that's at the root of what our users are interested in learning. So in that case, we'll go ahead and get started into our conversation about using QuoteWerks Web. So the things that we're going to cover today are going to be the workspace and document workbook, creating documents, so how you might actually go in and create a quote, how you can customize those documents, so the different tools that you have when you go and build a quote, pulling in products, so utilizing those product data source connections that we just showed, pulling in contacts. In this case, we're going to show you how we can pull in contacts and actually create a contact in ConnectWise. our CRM or PSA integrations more generally, how we can create opportunities to do tasks from those CRM integrations. We'll also take a look at quote delivery and acceptance with QuoteValet, and creating POs and exporting to QuickBooks. So kind of aligns with the setup in that what we're doing now is instead of setting them up, we're actually putting them to use. And when we're putting things to use and starting to actually utilize QuoteWerks Web, it's important for us to discuss some of the best practices. So as I mentioned earlier, have your users bookmark na.quoteworks.com. Again, make sure that they're bookmarking that and not the URL that they're going to, or that when they're logged in. It's not going to get them to where they want to be. Also want to make sure that your SQL environment, if not hosted with QuoteWerks, meets QuoteWerks minimum requirements. And this is super important because that SQL environment is the database that essentially runs the QuoteWerks web. So I want to make sure that we are meeting or actually exceeding those minimum requirements. I also mentioned earlier, we want to have one user for each person that's utilizing QuoteWerks Web. Just make sure that everything's clean and we have the ability to go and track different activities. We also want to make sure that every user is logging out at the end of each session. This ensures that other users can log in if you have a certain number of licenses, and also make sure that that session is terminated. We also have a new function or feature called File Manager, and this can be used to manage QuoteWerks web assets. So I'll show you what that does in a little bit here. But that's something that you can use if you need to manage what's included currently in web. And then you want to also sync documents to and from desktop if they change regularly. Again, this is going to be the process of essentially taking anything that's changed from a layouts or templates perspective on the local desktop and just pushing it up to the cloud. Majority of everything that you do in desktop is going to be shared in a common database with QuoteWerks Web, but these are for very specific types of things. And if you do make a change to settings, it's important to mention you want to potentially log out and log back in if you're not seeing those changes take effect, because in some cases there is going to be a need for you to log out and log back in to see those. And then if you're trying to change an administrative setting and it's not available in web, just check desktop. It'll be there soon. Like I said, we're looking at 100% feature parity plus. So definitely just keep an eye on that. And if it's not, again, in web, it most likely exists on desktop. So that being said, we're going to dive in. This is a very, I'm sorry, Brian, go ahead.
Yeah, if you go back one, sorry.
Yep.
So just a couple of points of clarification here. When it comes to the syncing, it's as simple as just clicking on a button to sync. It's not like you have to go through a bunch of steps or anything like that. And then also when we're talking about the SQL environment, if it's hosted by you, it may not be as fast as if it was hosted by us as well. One of the great things about using our database hosting is the fact that everything is in its own virtual private network. So that way everything will connect very quickly when it comes to QuoteValet, when it comes to your database, and when it comes to QuoteWerks Web. If it is hosted by you, which is great, it has to go over the web and go bounce back and forth between your server and our server. So that is one thing to keep in mind when it comes to where your database is hosted.
Right. Thanks, Brian.
Sorry.
Good points.
Yep.
All right, so let's get into the meat of it and start actually creating and delivering a document. We'll hop back over into our QuoteWerks web environment. And what we're going to do to start a new quote is we're going to hit the new button. If we did want to, we could easily come down and create a different type of document or select a template. Template is essentially a pre-configured quote that you can then pull in and start working without having to build it from the base up. So really good tool if you find yourself quoting out the same thing on a regular basis, or if you just want a standard template to start with. And then you also have your recents here as well. But again, I'm going to be creating a new quote, so hit new, and you'll see it opens up a new document workbook for us. First thing I want to point out is linking back to when we looked at some of the company defaults, or the document defaults, I should say. You saw information like CHIP-via, FOB, terms, right? All this information, or majority of this information, is going to be set by default based on those defaults that we looked at. So like we mentioned, contract start date or due date, I think we said would be 7 days out in the future. You'll see that it is currently set to 11/21. So it's saving our default, but we are able to come in and change those if we'd like as well. We also have tax rate. We have some custom text fields over here, and then our sales rep and prepared by. Ton of information on the sale info tab, including the ability to set up your purchase options as well, which are payment options, excuse me, which we're not going to get into today, but this is where you would go ahead and do that. So since we've understood kind of the way that the document is going to be configured from a sale info perspective, the next step would be going to the ship to or sold to ship to tab. And as I mentioned, and you saw in our CRM integrations, we're currently connected to ConnectWise. One option that you have is if you are working with a new customer and do not want to necessarily go first into ConnectWise and create that contact first, you can come in here and actually create the contact, and it'll actually create that company and contact in ConnectWise. Now, it's important to mention that this is going to create an entirely new company with the contact John Jones. If the company, the Jones Group, already exists in ConnectWise, you're going to want to go ahead and add that contact in ConnectWise or Autotask or whatever CRM PSA you're using. This is, again, to be used if you're creating a new company and a new contact in the contact manager. But we already have our contacts that we want to use in our contact manager. So all we have to do is come up here and click on the magnifying glass. I like to pick on Brian. So I'm going to go to Aspire Technologies, and we're going to make Brian our sold to contact on this particular document. We're going to select the address that we're going to use, and we're going to see that Brian's information has all been uploaded here into the sold to ship to tab. So now that we've set our document defaults, or at least confirmed our document defaults, we've added a contact. The next step would be to pull in products into our quote. We can do that by either clicking on products on the left or our products icon on the standard toolbar. And as you saw when we looked at our product data sources, this is a representation of all of those different data sources that were set up, in addition to our Edelweiss data source here. So you'll see we have a connection in with our Autotask, as well as our ConnectWise environments. And then we have those native data sources and our QuickBooks data source as well. I am going to go ahead and just pull out a part from here. Let's say that we want to quote out to Brian a switch, some network monitoring, and some labor to install that switch. We can do that easily by selecting a single item or multiple items while holding Control, and then we hit Add Selected Items to Document, and that will open up the Add Item Assistant. Now, Add Item Assistant is the same thing that you would see in desktop. You have the ability to control the quantity as well as the price modifier or cost modifier that you might be applying there. You get to see the history for the customer, so what you've sold this product at for this customer throughout the history of that particular customer, and then the history for this item across all of your customers as well. So it gives you the ability to review what you've sold it for in the past and keep your pricing consistent. So here we've got our product. We've configured our defaults in the sale info tab. We've added our sold to ship to contact. We've pulled in a product. At this point, we might want to go ahead and save our quote. So if we save our quote, you'll see that it brings up the save quote. We have our default naming convention that we have set on our document tab, and I'm just going to add there test, and we have the ability with our ConnectWise integration and with a number of other integrations, the ability to do different things at the time of saving the quote. With our ConnectWise integration, we can create update sales opportunities, link documents, follow activities, one-off activities, as well as service tickets. For the purposes of today, I'm just going to go ahead and create and update the sales opportunity. And you'll see that I can also toggle being online or offline if I actually want to save or push this information into ConnectWise, or if it's maybe sometime I don't want to actually create that opportunity. I'm going to go ahead and OK. And this is actually going to save the document and again, reach out to ConnectWise and create this opportunity for us. And in just a moment here is going to be a screen that pops up that is the screen that allows us to create that opportunity. And it's going to have some defaults that we would set when we're setting up the integration. But just like all these other screens that we work with, we have the ability to go in and change those as well. For the sake of this, I'm just going to go ahead and pull up a template. So this is actually a good opportunity to show you how to use templates. I didn't have to go through the process of going in and selecting products. All I'd have to do is come in and select my contact. Again, we're going to put Brian in there. And
you're going to be offline.
Yes, I was just going to say, because we've already done our opportunity creation, I am not going to create an opportunity again here. I am going to save it though, because that is a requirement before we move on to other steps in the process. And this is actually a great opportunity to show you that if I want to work within the quote and still save it without pushing it to ConnectWise, all I have to do is put I'm offline. So we'll go ahead and do that. So we've gone through setting defaults, creating a company contact, pulling in a contact, pulling in products, saving and creating the opportunity in your CRM PSA. Next logical step there would be delivering it to the customer. And we can do that by going to the Deliver tab. And we could easily come in here and go ahead and email our quote to the customer. But we have a great option here, which is QuoteValet. Again, QuoteWerks online delivery and acceptance vehicle. So we're going to go ahead and work with that in just a moment. But before we do, I just want to preview what this particular quote would look like. This is one of many different layouts that we have available, and many of our customers also customize these layouts in whatever way they want to accommodate different things. You'll see that this particular layout includes our customer information, and then it includes detailed descriptions for each of the products. For me, this might be a little bit too much. You might want to go in and say remove the marketing descriptions. But the thing that I want to mention about these templates and layouts is that they give you the ability to do whatever you want to do with the baseline of the data that's provided from QuoteWerks. Very extensible, and in the case of our layout here, we have a layout designer that you can use to create these templates. And then in the case of our templates for QuoteWerks Web, we have different ways that you can interact with those utilizing HTML and CSS coding. All right, so we've previewed it. What we can do, again, talking about QuoteValet, is to come into Upload to QuoteValet. We have the ability to view the PDF file. We have the ability to set signing options. So if we needed to set up additional signers from our customer that might need to sign off on, say, a high-value quote, we can do that. And we can even have countersigners if, let's say, we need another person within your organization to sign off on a quote before being converted to an order. We also have reminder options. So this is going to remind the recipient and or the sales rep the document hasn't been viewed in a certain period of time, is expiring in a certain period of time, or has not been paid after a certain period of time. When we upload, this is just uploading it to a QuoteValet server, and this is going to look a little bit different than the quote that we saw in PDF because it's an interactive web page. I didn't set up any special line attributes for this particular quote, but know that if you wanted to, you could make it so that some of these products could be optionally selected. Your customers could potentially change the quantity on some of these. There's really a lot of extensibility that you have with QuoteValet to make them interactive. With QuoteValet, you also have the ability to collect credit card purchases, ACH, other types of payments, and the order confirmation section is right down here as well, which is where your customer can provide their acceptance. And once they hit click to accept, if you have a deposit requirement, that deposit would be asked for. And if you have a payment gateway configured, that payment gateway request, or I should say payment request, would display on the screen for the customer. All right, so that is a kind of end-to-end overview as to how you would create a document to delivery. There are a lot of insights that QuoteValet gives you to the activity that you see on a document. This is the QuoteValet tab, gives you the ability to see any of the information as to what the customer's done. Let's say you did set up optional items. This would be where the customer would, it would show that the customer actually made changes to the quote, if they accept the quote, if they make payments, it'll all be listed here. And there's a number of other things that you can do, like viewing the customer page or viewing the payment request page. In addition to QuoteValet, we have QuoteValet Insights and QuoteValet Dashboard. I'm not going to get into detail on those now, but both of those provide just additional information as to actionable items that you can take based on the quotes that are out there, whether they're notes about quotes being accepted, comments being left on quotes, all that stuff is going to be presented there in a quick and easy way to read. And there's just one last thing I wanted to show you, and that's the ability to export POs to QuickBooks. So let's say that we wanted to come in and convert this to an order. We can easily do so by hitting Convert to Order. And if we wanted, we can then go to QuickBooks, choose any number of different orders that we have, and hit Export. And so long as we have our QuickBooks connector on there, it's going to export that document to QuickBooks, and then it can be used from there. It's going to give us the ability to just make sure the bill to and ship to is all set, and it just gives us a note that one of the lines was empty, but it is exported out to QuickBooks. So again, end-to-end, from setup to use to exporting out to your accounting system, QuoteWerks Web really gives you a lot of extensibility, and I'm at this point happy to answer any additional questions that the group may have. I know this is a very, very quick demo with a lot of stuff included, so I certainly welcome any questions that you might have. Let me take a quick look. And while I'm doing so, I'm just pulling some information up here on the screen. So there are a lot of different resources that you have available to you. We've talked about the help files and the link that you have available to you on the bottom left-hand side of the QuoteWerks Web panel. There's a ton of videos out there as well, particularly related to QuoteWerks Web and other topics. We have the forum. We're going to be doing regular webinars. I think we have another webinar coming up on Tuesday around our desktop Halo PSA integration. I also welcome you to go to the tips and tricks page on the QuoteWerks website to sign up for our tips and tricks emails that come out monthly. And then, as always, we're here to help. You can either reach out to community@quoteworks.com if you have any questions about this webinar, or if you have any general questions, you can reach out to our technical support or sales team, and we are always happy to engage with you on the socials. So again, we'll kind of circle back. I'll check to see if there are any questions here. Brian, you see any that we might want to address?
I do not have any that we haven't already addressed. I did want to point out too, if you've received any emails from us recently about the QuoteWerks MVP, I highly recommend that you vote on that. That is something that is very coveted, and right now it is pretty close in the top 3 rankings, so your vote does count on that.
All right. Well, with that being said, I appreciate your help today, Brian. I appreciate everyone for joining, and I look forward to seeing you on future webinars. Have a great day.
Have a great day, everybody.